Imagine being hunted by a serial killer, then surviving the attack. Most people would run to the police. But this man is a ruthless crime boss. After barely escaping death, he does the one thing nobody expects. He declares war on the killer himself. Now the city's most dangerous gangster and the detective trying to arrest him are forced to work together. One is hunting for justice, the other wants revenge. But neither of them realizes the killer has already chosen his next victim, and this time, someone they both care about is on the list. On the grimy streets where power is measured and who can make the other guy bleed first, Jang Dong-soo runs his crew like a blunt instrument. Direct, loud, and terrifyingly efficient. He's a gangster who likes things simple. Loyalty, muscle, and enough cash to keep everyone in line. But the movie doesn't let him have that quiet for long. One night, in a sudden and brutal assault that upends his sense of control, someone tries to kill him. He survives, shaken and furious, and that survival is the spark that drags a cop and a killer into an uneasy triangle no one wanted. Jang's injury is the inciting incident. It's not just that someone tried to off him, it's the audacity of it. A figure who seems to be targeting people at random, striking with cold efficiency, has gone after a gangster boss. That's dangerous for the underworld and even more dangerous for the streets. Jang, who isn't used to being the hunted, reacts like he always does, by turning fury into action. He wants the man who did this found and punished, and he'll pay for it. Money talks in his world, and he drops a big bounty on the head of whoever can bring the killer to him. Enter Young Tae-suk, a serious, by-the-book detective, with a quiet moral backbone. He's tired of the system and the corruption that muddies the badge, but he's stubborn about evidence and procedure. When Jang's bounty appears, Jung sees it as both an obstacle and an opportunity. The killer's modus operandi, the way the attacks are carried out, the lack of obvious motive, the random brutality, is unlike your usual gang-on-gang violence. The victims don't fit a pattern that law enforcement can easily categorize, and that bothers Jung. He wants answers, not payouts. Still, survival and resources matter. He can't ignore the cash and the lead it buys. Their interests align in a way they wouldn't normally. Both want the killer off the streets, but for very different reasons. The film spends time establishing these characters in short, economical scenes, so you get who they are without an info dump. Jung isn't some mustache-twirling villain. He cares about his crew, and he has a code. Jung isn't a saint either. He's pragmatic and exhausted by the system's compromises. That tension between a man who lives outside the law and a man who represents the law is the movie's engine. They form an alliance that's basically a contract. Jang provides muscle and street reach. Jung provides legal know-how and investigative skill. Imagine two guys who don't trust each other, agreeing to hold hands because the only other option is chaos. They begin hunting the killer methodically. Jung uses police resources to follow leads, sift through CCTV, and build a legal case that could stick. Jung uses his men to shake down informants and dig into the city's underbelly, where cops can't always go. The killer, meanwhile, remains unsettlingly calm, like a ghost who knows he can operate under the radar. He's meticulous, personal, and terrifyingly clinical. He leaves a signature, an almost ritualistic method that's difficult to trace, but haunting to witness. The victims die under similar, cold circumstances, and the randomness makes everyone feel vulnerable. The movie does well at making you feel that creeping dread, that at any moment, the killer could choose his next target, and you'd be none the wiser. As the investigation deepens, the relationship between Jang and Jung grows complicated. There are scenes where mutual respect starts to flicker. Dangerous stuff, when one of you carries a baseball bat for a living, and the other carries a warrant. Jung sees Jang's humanity occasionally, how he protects his people like family. Jang sees Jung's determination and is oddly impressed by his refusal to play dirty, even when dirty might work faster. But just because two people cooperate doesn't mean they share values, and the film thrives on testing the partnership. They argue over methods, cross moral lines, and bargain for leverage. There's a good back and forth of grudging admiration and simmering mistrust that keeps the tension believable. They hit a couple of leads that feel promising. A break in the case comes from an unlikely place. A survivor's tiny clue, a grainy camera shot, or a slip by a low-level criminal who thinks they can profit from chaos. The team pieces together a pattern that points toward a suspect, Kang Kyung-ho. He's not a man who draws attention to himself. He's a quiet, unsettling presence who blends into the background until he strikes. Once they narrow in on Kang, the stakes rise. This is a killer who's not just violent, but methodical and emotionally detached. In scenes where he's on screen, there's a chilling calm that's almost worse than outright rage because it suggests a mind that thinks through its brutality. The midsection of the film is the cat-and-mouse phase, and it's tense and steadily paced. Jung tries to use the law to trap Kang. Jang tries to use fear and force to flush him out. They set up decoys, surveil likely targets, and stake out places the killer might hit. Sometimes their methods work, sometimes they blow up spectacularly. The movie doesn't give you a sequence of flawless victories. Instead, it gives you messy outcomes where luck and human error play big roles. People die, and every loss sharpens Jang's desire for vengeance and Jung's determination for justice. The emotional core is not just the pursuit, it's how that pursuit affects everyone around them. Jang's crew, Jung's colleagues, and the small, helpless victims who get caught in the crossfire. There are a few standout sequences where the film shows, rather than tells, how fragile the line between justice and revenge can be. One scene in particular, less about specifics and more about tone, pushes Jung to question the system he's sworn to uphold. He watches Jang enact punishments outside of the law and sees, for a terrifying instant, how effective violence can be at delivering a quick, cold ending. The camera lingers on Jang's hands, on the silence that follows brutality, and you understand why Jung struggles. It's not that he condones the violence, it's that he sees how quickly the legal path can be bogged down while people continue to suffer. As the net tightens, secrets come out. The film layers in subplots about corruption, hidden loyalties, and the small betrayals that accumulate in both the police force and the criminal world. People expect certain predictable arcs: betrayal by a close ally, surprise evidence, an arrest thwarted at the last minute, and the movie hands those to you. But it does so with enough character detail that those beats feel earned. Jang learns some uncomfortable things about who was colluding with whom. Jung discovers that even his own department isn't immune to compromise. Those revelations raise the question the movie keeps asking: what is justice when the institutions meant to deliver it are flawed? The tension crescendos into a final confrontation that's brutal and inevitable. By then, you've seen enough to realize that bringing Kang in will cost people dearly. The showdown is messy and physical. No clever legal maneuver saves the day. Instead, it's knuckles, gut, and grit. Jung tries to follow procedure even as things spiral. Jung is incapable of restraint, and Kang's calm persists even as his web closes in. The film doesn't shy away from the moral gray. Jang's violence is effective but monstrous, and Jung's adherence to law is admirable but sometimes impotent. When the killer is finally faced, the movie forces you to watch what happens when two very different types of punishment collide. Without spoiling every beat, the film's ending lands on a note that's both satisfying and thorny. There's resolution. The immediate threat is dealt with, but there's also consequence. Jang pays a price for crossing the lines he crossed. Jung for pursuing justice in such compromised company. The film doesn't reward easy answers. Instead, it leaves you thinking about the costs of survival in a city where the rules are elastic, and where sometimes the man who looks like the villain is the only one willing to do what's necessary to stop a greater evil. It's a familiar moral dilemma, dressed up in kinetic violence and sharp performances. Performance-wise, Ma Dong-seok brings charisma and quiet menace to Jang. He's both lovable and terrifying in the role, the kind of character you can't easily categorize, which is precisely the point. The cop, played with controlled intensity, serves as a moral center without becoming a sermon, and the antagonist, whether named outwardly or implied through cold behavior, is portrayed as a genuine force of nature, unnerving, relentless, and weirdly intimate in his choice of victims. The supporting cast fills out the world: henchmen who are loyal until loyalty gets inconvenient, and police colleagues who mean well but are hamstrung by bureaucracy. The movie mixes action with character beats effectively. It's not an all-guns-blazing spectacle. Instead, it's measured, letting violence land with weight and consequence. That pacing helps make the moral questions land too. There's also a sly undercurrent of dark humor in places. A funny line here, a dry eyebrow raised there, that keeps the tone from being unrelentingly grim. Those moments of levity don't undercut the stakes. They humanize characters who might otherwise feel like archetypes. By the time the credits loom, you've seen a stacked sequence of choices and consequences. The film closes by making you consider what you'd sacrifice to keep the streets safe, and whether the ends ever justify the means. It doesn't give you a neat pat on the back. Instead, it leaves a residue, a memory of the people who were pushed to the edge, and what they did when they got there. The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil is a lean, gripping ride that balances gritty action with a surprisingly thoughtful look at how broken systems and desperate people collide. If there's a final takeaway, it's this. Violence can solve a problem in the moment, but it creates others you don't see coming.